Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Samantha, and I am the webinar lead at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guests and get started today, I have a bit of legal housekeeping to do. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own. And however true, funny, or interesting they may be, they are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial advisor. So for today, we're thrilled to bring you this educational presentation. Attendees are muted, but we encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. The presenters will answer those queries during and after the webinar today as appropriate. If you ask a question in the chat box, go ahead and leave your phone number as well. If we can't get to your question during the event, we'll make sure somebody reaches out to you today after the event. We want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please don't hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion on the material. So today, I would like to introduce to you our presenter. Alex first discovered the world of investments at age 14 and would spend hours after school screening stocks and calling companies in which he was particularly interested in. He couldn't help but become fascinated with future technology, specifically with respect to which industries would be running the economy 20, 30, and 50 years in the future. Inspired by his family struggles during the 2008 financial crisis, Alex chose to pursue a career in financial planning. He has a bachelor's degree in personal financial planning and spent 3 years learning the industry at Mass Mutual and joined Detalius Advisors. Apologize if I spelled or said that incorrectly. In April of 2020. Alex thrives on the interaction with his clients and takes great pride in the formation and execution of the financial game plan to help each client get the most out of each of their dollars. Alex is an investment advisor representative and holds various insurance licenses and is a certified financial planner, CFP professional. And with that, I pass it off to you, Alex.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro and hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Exciting topic to be talking about is some mistakes to avoid when starting and growing your business. It can be a little overwhelming for some people when it comes, people, whether it's having an idea or they are just looking to get out of the 9-to-5 thing. Most people turn towards entrepreneurship. It's something that's become a lot more buzzy and popular and a more common path in the last decade or so, especially with access to the internet and different ideas. There's a lot of different ways you can grow and scale a business now than there used to be. But it's very common. I see people, I don't want to say rushing into it, but maybe not knowing how to best prepare before they go and start their business. So that's what we're going to spend most of our time talking about on the front end here. And then as we get to the back end, we'll talk a little bit more about growth and scaling the business after you've started it. So first, we're going to talk about getting financially ready. So oftentimes people want to start a business, they save up some money. They know they're going to have startup costs. They know that there's going to be a period where they're not making money or making as much money. Sometimes people will choose to go ahead and start the business while keeping their 9-to-5, right? So maybe it starts as a little side hustle, something that you can spend 10, 20 hours a week on as you build it up. Other times people are going to quit their 9-to-5 altogether and maybe not have an income for months or even years. And a lot of times people don't go through the trouble of really planning for that transition. So they're not sure how much money they need or should have or should saved before they make that jump, right? So that's one of the main reasons businesses fail, is not because the business wasn't going to work. It's because the founder runs out of money before the business can work. It takes time to rent, whether it's marketing and logistics or just figuring out the pain points of your business. It takes time to ramp up and get to profitability and get to being able to take an income. So the more runway and wiggle room you can give yourself for that learning curve and those mistakes, it's infinitely more likely that your business is going to be successful. If you want your business to succeed, one of the best things you can do is to take the time to prepare financially before you start the business and make sure that you have what you need to give the business its best chance at success. This obviously isn't always going to be possible. Like for example, I know somebody that started a medical device sales when COVID happened. If he had waited 6 months or a year to start that business, then the opportunity would have been gone, and there would have been no chance to, business never would have worked, right? So he had to kind of dive in from wherever he was. So even if you're not sure what your business idea is yet, or you're not committed to a business plan, the best thing you can do is start preparing financially, because regardless of what business you decide to start, you're going to need capital, you're going to need debt, you're going to need to have your personal finances in order to give that business its best chance at success. Sorry, let's go to the so there's a bunch of different things you should be doing to get ready for financial success. And one of those is securing funding for your venture. So there's a lot of different ways this can look. The first place people go usually is personal funds. So what do you have in saving and checking? Maybe people look at their retirement balances. They look at equity in their home as places that they can source to get their business started. They also might reach out to family, friends, investors, people that would be willing to financially back them to get their business going. And then you can also look to get loans. So you can go and get an SBA loan, go to your bank. If you've got other maybe rental properties or another business, you might be able to take out debt there. But the main thing is, this goes back to having a plan beforehand, is knowing how much you're going to need. So having a business plan where you know, these are my startup costs, this is my burn rate, here's the number I know I need in funding before I start this business. And it's usually going to be a conglomeration of the sources, right? It's not hopefully all going to come from loans. It's not all going to come from personal funds, but you're going to have some combination of these 4, 5, 6 tools that add up to that total number you know you need to give your business the best chance at success. When it comes to raising those funds, almost always, if you're going to start a larger scale business, debt is going to be a part of that funding. So it might not be big. Maybe it's just a couple of truck or car loans or equipment loans. It might not be a ton of debt, but almost always financing is going to be a part of how you start a business. And a big mistake you can make is waiting until you start the business before you secure that debt. So you got to think about, if you are a lender or a bank, somebody that's trying to give you money to, and in the hopes that you're going to pay them back plus interest. If you go to a bank and you go, hey, I just started this business, I'm 200 grand in debt already, we're not making any money, I don't have any profit, I didn't pay any taxes last year, can you give me another 50 grand? That's not the most attractive proposition for that bank or lender or whoever it is that's financing you, compared to if you start securing that debt before you actually start the business. So if you've got a 9-to-5 job where you make 100 grand a year, and now you can go to that bank and say, obviously this isn't going to be the SBA loan part of things, but maybe it's a second line of credit on your home or just a personal loan. If you go to the bank and you are, you've got 10 grand coming in every month, you can prove that you can pay back the debt. There's nothing stopping them that's going to change the loan when you quit your job. They're not going to know about that or come back to you on that. So you're going to be much more lendable as a 9-to-5 worker with a stable salary than you are 6 months or 12 months later when you start your business. So having a plan, knowing how much debt you're going to need to acquire, and then going out and acquiring that debt before you need it and before you start your business is going to make you way more likely to have access to the debt. And I'll regularly advise my clients to open up additional lines of credit, even if they don't think they're going to need them, because there's really a no risk, no harm situation. If you've got $100,000 second line of credit on your house, for example, whether that's in the form of a second mortgage or a HELOC, if you don't use it, you haven't done any harm. You're not costing yourself any money. There's no interest payment. There's usually little to no fee for even opening the line in the first place. You can also take loans directly against investment accounts so that you don't have to actually sell the investments and pay the taxes. So even if you don't think you're going to need that line, it can make a lot of sense to go ahead and get it open while you're still in a strong financial position and can get approved for that line of credit purely for emergency planning purposes. So you go, okay, I think I'm going to need 400 grand to start this business. And then you're a year and a half in and you've burned through the 400 grand and you need another 150,000. Well, now you're in a position where you've got a struggling business and $400,000 in debt. You're not going to be able to go and get approved for that additional 150 that you need to keep the business running and keep the business operating. Whereas if from day one, even though you thought you were only going to need 400, you'd have been perfectly capable of going out and getting the 550 or 600 before you started your business. So just being open to all the different ways of funding a business, again, looking at personal funds, whether it's a family and friend loan or a personal loan or loans on your house or SBA loans, being careful with 401k and retirement plan, but just looking at all the different avenues of where you can secure funding and then having a plan for how to make the most of that and doing it before you need it, doing it before you start the business is just another way that you can give yourself the best chance at succeeding. So all of that should lead to a question being, how much money do I need to start my business is something everybody should be asking before they start the business. This can be a really wide range. Again, we're living in an internet era where there's all kinds of online businesses that have little to no startup costs. You might be able to start a business for $1,000 today. That would have been nearly impossible 30 years ago. There's also businesses with millions of dollars in startup costs. So knowing what your business is going to take to start is one thing, right? So whether it's, hey, I need to buy a building, or hey, I need to buy equipment or buy inventory or pay employees, whatever that might be, those are the upfront costs. But the second phase is what's known as your burn rate. So there's both a personal and a business burn rate, but essentially how much money are you going to be burning every month as you're trying to start your business? So one side of this is on the personal side. So if you're going to quit your 9-to-5, right? And whether you're going to pay yourself a salary or not when you're not making any money, your personal budget does have an impact on your business, right? Because if you need $6,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 every month to live your normal life, that money's going to, at the end of the day, be coming from your personal funds or your loan that is also supporting your business. So your personal budget has a direct impact on how long the business's burn rate is. And then there's the business side as well of whatever marketing and operating expenses are. If you have rent, if you have, utility stuff, if you're paying employees, you've got a monthly fixed expense to operating the business. Okay. So what your burn rate is personal side, business side. If we didn't do a single dollar in sales, no revenue whatsoever, how much money would we spend? Right. So on one side, you've got maybe, hey, just to live my life, pay my bills, eat, take care of the kids, whatever. I know I need $8,000 a month. My business costs $12,000 a month to operate. But by the time you pay the taxes and insurance and rent and whatever else goes into your business plan. So, your burn rate is $20,000 a month. And once you know your burn rate, you can also calculate your runway. So that is your total funding secured divided by your burn rate equals your runway. Or in other words, how long can my business survive before we do our first dollar in revenue or start making a profit, right? So if you were able to secure $240,000 of funding and you've got a burn rate of $20,000 a month, 240 divided by 20 equals 12. So you know that you could operate the business for a year, live your life for a year, and if you didn't do a single dollar in revenue the entire time, at the end of the 12 months, that's when the business would essentially fail at that point, right? So you know how much time you have to scale up your business, which should have a direct impact on your business plan, right? So if you've got a 4-month runway, you might have to take a different approach to scaling your business compared to somebody that has a 24-month runway, right? So understanding before it just sneaks up and hits you in the face and all of a sudden you're 9 months in and maybe you haven't done the revenue you thought you would and you're surprised that you're out of money. Knowing what that is on the front end is going to help you make better decisions about how to start and how to grow your business. And you can only find that answer by knowing your numbers, knowing your total funding, and knowing your burn rate. So I think that's probably like to sum the whole numbers chapter thing up. When it comes to starting a business, it is so at the end of the day, a business is numbers, right? So yes, you've got these tangible products and marketing and consumer, you got to study your consumer, you got to know your target market. There's all this non-money stuff, but at the end of the day, what makes a business is how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, how much profit do we make, where do we invest our money to grow the business. It's all numbers at the end of the day. So if you're not a numbers person, you're going to have to find somebody that is, because numbers are an essential part of a business. And if you want your business to be successful, you have to know your numbers. So before you even, people always go get an LLC, do all this stuff. You, as part of your business plan, has to be, what are my startup costs? Where am I going to secure that funding? Once I get started, what are the operating costs going to be? Am I going to pay myself a salary or not? If I'm operating a business, how much am I going to owe will I owe taxes even if I don't make money? Or if I make a little bit of money, do I have a tax expense on that? You have to have those items laid out before you go and start the business. And I want to spend a little time here on this last bullet point because I think it's something, it's a very common mistake I see. Is one of the main things people usually talk about when they talk about starting a business is replacing their 9-to-5. So whether that's regularly it's in real estate, but it might be in an operating business, but people always talk about replacing their 9-to-5 income so that they can quit their job. And they go, okay, I make $100,000 a year. So if I can get a business that generates $100,000 a year, I can quit my job. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are missed there. Sometimes we don't maybe think about them or appreciate them as much when we're working, is the value of your benefits package. So oftentimes work is supplying life and disability insurance. They're supplying a 401k. They're paying for part or all of your health insurance. They might be contributing to an HSA and FSA and all these things that your company takes care of for you. Well, the day you quit your 9-to-5, all that stuff becomes your responsibility now. And I really, really commonly see people not account for those things on the front end, and then B, also neglect them after they start their business. So if you're making $100,000 salary, you might go through all of those benefits and find out that your total comp is actually something more like 130, 140, 150 by the time you add up all the benefits the company is supplying. So if you went into a business going, I need to make 100 grand, and then you start making 100 grand and you go, okay, cool, now I can quit my job. You're going to be 6 months in and being like, why do I feel so broke? And it's because you weren't properly accounting for all the other benefits your work was supplying you, that you now have to take care of yourself. So when you are kind of, whether that's phase one, everybody's going to be in a different stage of when they want to make that transition. Maybe it's before they start the business, or maybe it's as they're making that second or third leap in their business that they're thinking about quitting their 9-to-5. But making sure you really understand all of the compensation and benefits that you're giving up in the 9-to-5 world, and that your business is actually ready to kind of support and load all of that. So I think if you can get there, get to a point where that's kind of the, like I said, the second stage of it. But when it comes to knowing your numbers before you start your business, you need to have your funding secured, know what your startup costs are, know what your burn rate is, know what your runway is, and know what income you're trying to replace. And if you're there, you're probably doing better than 99% of people before they start their business. That's really it on the numbers front. We're going to get into some of the more non-tangible things, but I don't know if we have any questions or not in the chat just yet surrounding the number side of things. So if anybody has any questions for that, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them if we can without getting into too much detail.
Yeah, definitely have your questions ready. Send them in the chat. Alex is more than happy to answer them for you and talk through them. I know that I had one question just listening to you talk about numbers. As somebody who's not a number oriented myself, is there any help I need or anything that really tells me that I'm ready to start, not just the business side, but also quitting my 9 to 5 to do that business full time instead of it just being something I'm growing myself?
Yeah, so I think a little bit of it depends on what kind of business you're starting and how far scaled into it you are. I think a minimum baseline before you should even be thinking about it is having that full year of runway. Now, it doesn't all have to be sitting in the bank account, right? It's okay if some of that is debt funding and versus personal savings or whatever other forms of liquidity you might have. But you better be able to go a year with little to no income and without putting yourself in a position of failure. If you can't do that, you are not ready to quit your 9 to 5 yet. So I think at least that should be the minimum standard. And then depending on how expensive and complicated your business is to run, there may be a case for extending that out to 18 or 24 or 36 months. But a year of runway for both your business expenses and personal expenses, you've at least got a reasonable opportunity of being able to quit your 9 to 5.
Lovely. Thank you so much for answering that. That actually helps tie everything together for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So next I want to get into some of the, like I said, less numbers oriented things when it comes to running a business. So one important thing is you're going to need help. You can't do everything yourself. You shouldn't do everything yourself. That's not how your time is best spent. So business owners have to wear a lot of hats. That's part of the deal. But every minute you spend on kind of the other things is a minute you're not spending growing your business. So when it comes to some of the tax and financial planning side of things, making sure you and your family are personally protected is really important. A lot of times people just think you can get an LLC and then everything's protected, and it's not that simple. And when it comes to America's kind of a sue happy country. So depending on the business you're operating, one little mistake could wipe out you and your business all in one swoop. So making sure that you're working with the right attorneys, the right insurance professionals, the right tax person, that you're not digging a hole for yourself, right? The worst thing you could do is be, you do the hard part and you take nothing and you turn it into a successful business, and then you have one stupid little tiny mistake somewhere that winds out wiping up all of that hard work. I mean, I can't really imagine anything more tragic and painful than that, right? If you start a business and then it fails, that sucks, but you knew you were starting a risky thing, and kind of no one to blame but yourself, and you probably learned a lot, and at least there was some gain and experience. But to actually make the business be successful and then have one of those little just blind spots trip you up and blow the whole thing up, that's the worst outcome I can imagine. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And the only way to make sure that that doesn't happen is to have the right professionals yeah, you might end up spending $5,000 on it. It shouldn't be any more expensive than that to get the basics done right and make sure that you're set up for success. But do not neglect these kind of they're not part of the business plan. They're not part of the financial plan, but making sure that your business is properly protected, your family's properly protected, you're paying your taxes and not digging a giant hole for yourself on the tax side. So obviously, when we get into the risk part of things, there's a few different angles to take. One of them is obviously the business insurance. This is usually to protect some of the assets that your business might own. So whether that's a piece of property or vehicles or equipment, it can also be to protect yourself from liability on your premises or for while someone's working or operating in your business or for a customer or client. There's a million, right? You hear about it all the time, right? Somebody's injured on the work job or whatever it was. I think maybe a decade ago when that lady spilled hot coffee on herself and sued McDonald's for like $250 million, right? That luckily McDonald's has that kind of money, but none of us probably do, right? So one little mistake, even if it's something that seems like a small or fluky thing, really could be the nail in the coffin to anybody's business. There's hundreds and thousands of these stories out there. So making sure your business is protected from any liability or ability to be sued by whether that's employees or customers, making sure that your assets are protected from any, whether there's flooding or any kind of weird tragedy that could disrupt your business. Thinking about that, I mean, it's twofold, right? Not only do you have to replace the equipment, you also then aren't able to operate your business the same way, right? So one little, especially in those infant years of your business where every month, every week, every day, every minute kind of matters. One little thing with a truck going down or a machine failing and it's 3 weeks before you can get the part, that can be the kind of thing that kills a business. Whereas accounting for the $500 a month business insurance expense is a lot easier to plan for than those one-off things. So protecting your assets, protecting yourself from liability, protecting your family as well was where kind of the rest of that stuff comes in. So we talked a little bit about the benefits through work and what you're going to need to replace. Pretty much summed up as health, life, and disability are things that work usually provides to everybody. Most 9-to-5 jobs provide at least some benefit in all three of those categories. And you're going to lose that when you drop your 9-to-5 to start a business. So talking to a health and life agent, talking to a disability agent, and talking to a financial professional to figure out what the right amount of coverage is. And just as important, how to get it at the lowest cost possible, right? You're running a business, you need to be lean. There's expenses piling up everywhere, right? And you can't afford to neglect these things, but you can't afford to spend an arm and a leg on them either. So talking to somebody that can help you find the right way to get covered in all these areas, but also, respect the fact that it needs to be as low cost as possible to give your business the best chance of success. There's another big change that comes with being a business owner, and that is the time commitment. So people always, I hate like this social media thing where they like idolize this business owner thing as if now you're just going to get to be on a beach and work 15 hours a week because you don't have a boss you're reporting to. When it really couldn't be more the opposite. That can be an end game, right? After you've built a business and scale it up and learn it really well, and you've got it up, maybe you can hire out most of the things. 10, 15, 20 years into your business, yes, that can become a reality. But the first reality is that you're going to have to work way harder building a business than you are at your 9-to-5 job. It's going to be double or triple the hours and double or triple the effort during those hours if you want your business to succeed. So again, how long that heavy workload has to last is different for everybody and is different for every business. I'm not going to say there's not people out there that haven't just grinded for 6 months or 12 months and built a really great business that then they could take their foot off the pedal, but there is going to be a period of time where you have to work your butt off if you want your business to succeed, and making sure that you're ready for that, making sure that your family's in a position that you can be around less and they're going to be okay. Because same thing, it's just all about knowing what you're getting into. And if you are wanting to get into a business because you want time back in your life, understand there's going to be some delayed gratification there, right? And it is a path to time freedom for sure. And it's nice to be on your own clock, and it's nice to only report to yourself. But don't make the mistake of thinking that 6 months into growing your business, you're going to be taking 3 weeks to go and work from a beach somewhere, because if that's the case, your business probably isn't going to be successful. Which brings me to my next point, which is time efficiency. I think that's going to be a lot of times what separates a successful business from a failed one, is how well somebody can manage their time and find a way to get more work done in less time than their competitor. And understanding that literally every minute that you spend doing something else is a minute you can't be working on your business. So all of the greatest businesses in the world are really effective at outsourcing. You have to know what things are worth your time and energy and effort to do, what things, when you spend time on them, they're going to have a direct impact on your business in a meaningful way, compared to the things that maybe somebody else should be doing. So on the personal side, this can look, and I know this is going to maybe sound tough when you're starting a business, right? But this can look like hiring a cleaner to come and clean your house, right? I mean, that could be an extra 4 hours in a month that you could take and put towards your business instead. Maybe it's starting to Instacart the groceries instead, paying for additional daycare, whatever it is. At least thinking about the concept of, what is my time worth? What does it cost to have somebody else do that for me? And is my time better spent in my business, right? I mean, if you're going to be a business owner and you compare $40 to having somebody cut your grass, but an hour and a half that you'd have to take that time yourself. If you can't make $40 working an hour and a half in your business isn't going to make it, right? That hour and a half should be worth $400, right? So your money and time are both way better spent paying somebody else to do that, so that you can spend more time working on your business. And then that also comes back to business processes as well. So again, you see it all the time. The most profitable businesses, we maybe all sometimes get a little frustrated when we call into a company, and rather than talking to somebody that actually works there, it's just a call center, right? There's a reason why. That business has done the math and understands that they can either pay an employee $70,000 in comp to answer phones, or they can pay a contractor somewhere else $4 an hour to answer their phones. And that's not an important enough part of the business to justify the additional cost, right? So it's hard to speak to too many specific examples just because there's so many different types of businesses, but making sure that when you look on both the personal side and the business side, you're looking for opportunities to outsource different processes that are going to allow you to spend more time growing the business, which is the most important thing you can spend time on. Now, there's all of this so far has been kind of about starting a business and getting to the point of not failing, we'll say. It's a long road, right? Step one is not to go bankrupt, and then step two is to make a little money. And then at some point, you hopefully get to a point of abundance, right? To where your business is out of the woods, so to speak, right? Failure isn't really an option anymore. And now it's more about continuing to grow and see how much money we can make. One of the things I often see people make the mistake of is not flipping that switch. So when you start a business, like we talked about at the beginning, essentially what you're doing is you are supporting the business with your personal assets, right? So you're going to drain down savings accounts. Maybe you're going to take on extra debt. You might put it against your house. You might put it against investment accounts. Maybe you're going to borrow or take withdrawals from retirement accounts to get this business started. And that's what you have to do. That's the only way to start a business, right? Is you are taking your personal finances and risking them, sacrificing them to try and build something greater. But at some point, you have to flip that switch and allow the business to replenish some of those personal assets. So I've seen dozens of times in my career where somebody ran a really successful business for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And then the business kind of levels off or stops scaling. And they made a decent salary, but they don't really have anything to show for it at the end of the day. Maybe it's a business that's not very sellable. And rather than pulling money out of the business to grow their personal wealth again, they just kept rolling every dollar back into the business, buying a new truck or piece of equipment or hiring another employee and trying to build a bigger business. If you don't have a business that's sellable, that can be kind of a zero-sum game. You can be 50, 60 years old, ran an amazing business for 30 years, and then look around and not really feel like you have as much to show for it as you should. And one of the best ways to protect against that is knowing when it's time to go, okay, the business is sufficient, it's successful, it's making money. I can either take some of these profits and reinvest them in the business and try and generate more revenue and grow top line, grow better margins, whatever it is to make more money, or I can siphon some of this money out of the business to replenish my personal assets, pay down my debt, build up my cushion and investments again. And business owners really can struggle with making non-emotional decisions, right? They always think that the money in their business is going to be best spent. It's also a diversification issue, right? Of you've grown a successful business, maybe now it's worth $3 or $4 or $5 million, and it's an eggs in one basket situation, right? Where if anything happens to that business, you're right back to square one with nothing. Whereas rather than trying to grow the business from 5 to 10 million and still have no other assets, you're putting yourself in a much more secure position if you first pile up, use that business to replenish personal assets and grow some personal wealth outside of the business before you maybe turn around and flip the switch back and go back to scaling the business even further. And talking to an advisor is really probably the best way to figure out when's the right time to do that, what's the right way to do it. There's all kinds of different accounts you can set up. There's a million ways you could do it, but having that conversation with somebody that's done it before is the only way you're going to know that the time is right, and then B, the most effective way to do that. The other thing when it comes to, so two options, right? You've done it. You've taken failure off the table. Your business is operating. You're making money. One of the things you can and should do is use that success to replenish your personal wealth. And then the other thing is the next stage of your business, right? So knowing whether there is a growth plan, right? There are some businesses that don't scale and aren't meant to scale, and that's fine. There are awesome businesses where you go, hey, we're going to do $1 million in revenue. I'm going to make 250 grand. I'm going to be able to sell it for 4 times revenue in 15 years, and that's it. It's done. There's no scaling. There's no growth. If we scale, we'll fail. This is all it's supposed to be. And it can be nice to know, going and talking to somebody that's built the same business before to know what kind of business you're getting into, is probably the best way you're going to find that out, right? Of how far does this business really scale? On the flip side of that, right? It's maybe you are trying to grow your business into a $50 million, $100 million business and having a plan for that before that moment comes, right? So knowing always kind of keeping your eyes 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the road so that you've got the time to prepare for it, especially again, when it comes to what might be a time sensitive business opportunity. So looking at, are we going to need more space? Are we going to need more people? Are we going to need more equipment? Maybe usually once you get to where you've got 5, 10, 20 employees, now you're competing for talent, right? You're not just this small business anymore that is like, got friends and family working for you. You might be going out to the open marketplace, and you might need to start offering your own retirement plan and your own benefits to those employees. So having a plan for what that next stage of your business looks like, if it should even be a next stage or not, and just always trying to keep your eyes 6 months to 2 years ahead as a business owner. It sounds so common sense, like sitting here talking about it right now, but I see it all the time. It's being a business owner is hard, and there's so much going on in the day to day, hour to hour of running a business. It's really easy to never come up for air. And all of a sudden, you're just caught in this day to day lifestyle, and you blink and 3 years has gone by, and you haven't paused to breathe once and think about the future and think about what's next. So, a lot of times, my clients, I'll recommend the ones that are business owners scheduling some time, whether it's usually once every quarter, and maybe it's a date night with their partner, or maybe it's a night out with a business partner, or maybe it's just some time to themselves where they're going to unplug from the day to day of the business and really think about the future. What's next? What do they want their life to look like 6 months, 12 months from now? What do they want their business to look like 6 months, 12 months from now? It can be a really re-energizing process when it comes to the day-to-day of the business. And it's also the best way to you can't get where you're trying to get if you don't know where you're going, sort of thing. And it's really easy to lose sight of that when you're a business owner. So taking that time to think about what's next is one of the most important things you can do once you're really in the weeds operating your business. There's all kinds of little financial tips and tricks as a business owner, and a lot of them come around taxes. Everybody in America who talks about our tax system knows that our tax system is built in the favor of business owners. It's like that for a reason. Where capitalism thrives for a reason. Business is most productive in our country than any other country, and one of the main reasons why is how our tax system is set up to encourage that. You can really shoot yourself in the foot here when it comes to selling your business. Don't get too cute. Don't try and pay no taxes by showing no income, because guess what? If you don't have any income, your business isn't worth anything. So you need to show an income if you're thinking about selling your business, but making sure that you take the time to work with the right professionals and make sure that you are not leaving a stone unturned on the tax side of things. Because again, that can be the difference between success and failure in a business, right? If you've got $40,000 more in tax expense than you should have had over the course of the first couple of years of your business, that extra $40,000 can be the difference between failure and success. Whereas if you had just taken the time to work with the right accountant and have the right tax planning in place to save yourself that 40 grand, that might have been that 1 or 2 or 3 extra months of runway you needed to get your business to a successful place. So one of the main benefits of being a business owner is having a tax system that is in your favor. Make sure, if you're going to go through the trouble of being a business owner, that you get to know the tax system, whether that's your own research or working with a professional, and you get that thing to work in your favor as much as possible. The final step of any business is the day you're not going to run it anymore, right? And that's a reality for everybody. If you haven't started your business, this is probably a long one to think about, right? This is 10, 20, 30, 40 years away maybe, but one day you aren't going to be running your business anymore. And there's only 2 ways that can, I'll say 3 ways that can end. Either you hire, train, raise somebody to take over the business for you. They buy you out maybe over time. Maybe you retain some ownership in the business, some equity in the business, but you train the person that's going to take over for you and continue to operate your business. You can sell your business to a third party where you're going to step out completely. You get a big lump sum all at once and off you go. And the third and worst way your business can end is that nobody wants to buy it and there's nobody who can run the business without you. So the business ceases to exist once you don't want to operate it anymore. Certainly that's the worst way a business can end, right? Because there's no kind of financial payoff for all that hard work you did. Talk to people all the time, right? They're in their 50s and 60s and they're thinking about retirement, and whether they've started whether they have a plan for exit or not, sometimes they're a little delusional. That happens all the time. Somebody thinks their business is worth $4 million and they can't even get $500,000 for it. Happens every day. So not just making assumptions when it comes to the exit strategy, but knowing what your business is worth before it's time to sell it, knowing how you can maybe change some of the things how you're operating the business to make it more sellable. Knowing that if it's not a business that's going to be highly marketable, the plan where you hire somebody and train somebody to run your business for you, that's not something you can figure out in 6 months or even probably a year or two. That's usually going to be a 5-10 year process, right? So you can't wait until you want to sell your business, go, oh shoot, I can't sell it. Guess I got to find somebody to run it. You just added 3, 5, 10 years to the amount of time you're going to have to work in that business, right? So starting to think about exit 5 or 10 or 15 years before it's actually time to exit is one of the most important things you can do as a successful business owner, is to have a plan for that and know what path, am I on a path to sale or am I in a plan to train and retain ownership, is going to make sure that you've worked so hard to build this thing. It shouldn't have, if you don't end up selling it or having somebody take over, kind of all you did was create a job for yourself for 25 years, right? If all it ever did was provide your income, all you did was replace your 9 to 5 with an 8 to 8 that you owned and operated, right? A lot more stress and a lot more work, and maybe you made a little bit more money and had a little bit more fun, but it was a lot more stress and work just for, at the end of the day, it to have not been that different financially than if you had just kept working your 9 to 5. So a successful exit is a really important part of a successful business. So there is no exit without a successful business, right? So I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time and energy thinking about selling the business at the same time that you're still working on the business plan, right? Or working on getting it started. So you need to get to the point of having a successful business before you start to think about the end game and the exit plan. But I think pretty much as soon as you get to that point of, hey, I have a successful business, I'm making money, it's not going to fail, that's probably the right time to start thinking, okay, how does this thing end? Am I going to sell it? Is somebody going to take over? And how can I start? It might change the way you want to build your business if you know what that end game is. So taking some time to meditate on how this thing ends once you get to the point of having a successful business is going to make sure that all that hard work really pays off at the end. And boy, we tried to take you from kind of start of a business to end of a business there. We covered a whole lot. I don't imagine that all of that is going to be relevant to any of you, but I hope that some of it was relevant to all of you and what stage you're in when you're thinking about whether it's starting a business or growing a business or exiting a business. And before we wrap up here in the chat there, if anybody's got any questions, we've got a few minutes for Q&A. But besides that, that is our presentation for today. Let's see if there's anything. No.
Oh, we do have one. Kamara, if you would like, I can allow you to talk and come off mute. Let's see.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, Kamar. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for your presentation. I have just a quick question. How do I have proof that I attended this webinar? I'm sorry, I need it for my occupational license in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, that's not a me question.
That would be a me question. If you can send your email in the chat, you can probably private message me. I can send you something afterwards via email.
It says the chat is disabled, so I can't.
Oh, well, that
Yeah,
is
that's why.
really unfortunate. If you could email Samantha at Advice Chaser, and I can respond to you with an update.
Thank you, and sorry about that.
No worries.
Cool. Anyone else? Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Hope you had something to take away. And I assume most of you in here today are either running a business or thinking about running one. So if nothing else, just all the best of luck and preparation and success in your business.
Sounds good. Well, we have a couple of outros for you here today. On behalf of Advice Chaser, we want to thank our speakers and their organizations that have worked with us to bring you this webinar. Thank you so much for attending, and look for an email soon with a link to the replay of this event. You're welcome to share that replay with your family and friends. We do have a slight disclosure today. If you would like, take a chance to screenshot this. It will also be available on the recording and the website replay for you. Here at Advice Chaser, we are all about helping you find your financial advisor who is a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisors partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anybody we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you on another webinar soon.